Did you know that more than half of all the Muslim countries in the world have at one point in history been ruled by the Turks? You see, most people know the Turks as the people who live in Turkey, a country that sits right between Europe and the Middle East. Many of them have blue eyes and blonde hair, and if it weren't for the fact that they were Muslim, you could have confused them for being just another European Mediterranean nation. But in reality, the Turks come from a very far away land, as part of a bunch of countries that were once all part of the same family, somewhere in the flat, grassy deserts of Central Asia, in a place called the Great Steppe. In the 400s, the Turks were a bunch of small nomadic tribes migrating from place to place and warring with other tribes in an actually quite similar way to the Arabs before Islam. And it was around this time that the Mongols were starting to unite and pose a serious threat to the other nations in the region. And so by the 500s, Turks had packed their bags and started migrating west. Now, the thing about the Great Steppe is that it's wide, flat, and not a whole lot of people live there. So when the Turks moved west, they were able to expand into huge swaths of land with very little resistance. And eventually they consolidated their new land into the first Turkic Empire. Fast forward a couple hundred years and the Muslims have expanded out of the Arabian Peninsula. And now they're on the edge of the Turkic Empire. And at the same time, China was swallowing up land in the east and was headed right for the Muslims, and the Turks were caught in the middle. A small group of Turkish soldiers decided to join the Muslims in the Battle of Talas, an immensely important battle in the rivalry between the Muslims and the Chinese. And that's when they first heard the message of Islam. The Muslims managed to defeat the Chinese, and some of the Turks even converted after the battle. And this moment in history was the starting point for the rest of the Turks to eventually embrace Islam. A couple hundred years later, a merchant from Bukhara, which is where Imam Bukhari is from, by the way, was traveling through Central Asia to do business. He asked one of the local Turkish rulers if he could build a masjid there, since Muslims were now using the trade route a lot and they needed somewhere to pray. The ruler granted him permission and even gave him some money to build it. Eventually the masjid was built and the Muslim caravans used to stop by and pray and rest. And one 12-year-old boy by the name of Satuq Bughra Khan saw this and became curious. He entered the masjid and saw Muslims there praying 5 times a day and began asking questions. Soon after, he decided to become Muslim himself, but he kept his Islam a secret from his family. You see, the young boy was the nephew of the ruler and he was next in line, and he did not want to jeopardize his chance to bring his people to Islam. Eventually, Satuq took the throne, becoming the first Muslim Turkish Sultan. And by the way, his capital was in Kashgar, which is one of the main cities where the Uyghurs live in China, and the Uyghurs are Muslim Turks. It's all coming together now. So in the year 934, he converted his entire empire from Tengrism to Islam. And as the Muslim traveler Ibn Fadlan put it, 200,000 tents became Muslim, which has got to be at least 500,000 people, if not more, considering each tent is a family. It was called the Karakhanid Empire, and it was the first Muslim Turkish nation, and their descendants would become the Uzbeks in Uzbekistan, the Uyghurs in China, and the Khazaras in Afghanistan. And it just so happens that one of the enemies of the Karakhanids, in an effort to defeat them, ended up making another Turkic tribe Muslim. You see, the Samanids were a Persian tribe that lived nearby, and they were fighting over this land here. And the Samanids, they had been Muslim for a while now, and they were spreading the message of Islam in Central Asia. And it was great that the Karakhanids had become Muslim, but they still had a land dispute from before. The Samanid Sultan Ismail Samani decided that the best way to solve this dispute was to ally with other Turks in the region. He solidified an alliance with another powerful chieftain by marrying his daughter to him. Ismail quickly became influential over them, and eventually the entire Turkic tribe embraced Islam. They were called the Oghuz Turks, and their descendants would become the Turkmen of Turkmenistan, the Azeris of Azerbaijan, the Qashqai in Iran, and of course the modern Anatolian Turks of Turkey. But that still leaves the biggest Turkic country, Kazakhstan. You see, the Kazakhs were originally called Kipchaks, and they created their own empire just north of the Black Sea. It was a huge empire, and it stretched from Hungary to Mongolia until once again the Mongols showed up and they just got smashed. The Mongols took over their lands and now ruled over the Kipchaks. Subhanallah, wouldn't you know it, these Mongols became Muslim too. This part of the Mongol Empire was called the Golden Horde, and in 1313, Özbeg Khan, became its sultan. And then a very similar story to Saltuq Bughra Khan, who was that sultan of that first Turkic nation we talked about. Özbek became Muslim at a young age and waited for his turn to be sultan. Once he rose to power, he immediately began preaching Islam to his people. Soon enough, the entire Golden Horde accepted Islam, both the Mongols and the Turks within it. The Kipchak Turks would later become the Kazakhs of Kazakhstan and the Kyrgyz of Kyrgyzstan, and the Tatars of Russia and Eastern Europe. The Mongols, on the other hand, would go on to mix in with other Turkish nations, which supports the idea that Uzbeks got their name from Özbey Khan. They may actually be a Turkic-Mongol mix after all. And what's interesting is that these different Turkic and Mongolian tribes went on to build some of the most powerful and longest-lasting empires in Muslim history. The Ottomans, the Seljuks, and the Zengids, who Salahuddin was a general under, by the way, all came from the Oghuz Turks. The Memluks and the Khwarezmian and the Nogai horde all came from the Kipchak. And the Muslim Turkic Mongols went on to create the Mughal Empire, the Tughlaq dynasty, and the Crimean Khanate. The Turks have contributed immensely to the Ummah and have spread Islam in lands as far away as Mongolia to Ukraine to India and to Bosnia. Even think about the Lipka Tatars, who are Muslim Turks in Poland, who built the first masjid in New York City. Or think about Kuchum Khan and his army of Turks who spread Islam to the people in the middle of Siberia, while at the same time fighting a war with the Russians. The Turks are a massive group of people with hundreds, if not thousands, of little tribes and nations scattered across the earth, each with their own language and culture and history, tracing their roots back to a similar origin, and yet somehow they all became Muslim in different ways. And alhamdulillah that they became our brothers in Islam. And if you like this video and find it at all interesting, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you want more videos about Muslim history and culture from around the world.